Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel.
Finally, Kody Brown in crisis, bankruptcy shocker and plea to Christine and David Woolley. Kody Brown's patriarchal world has not just crumbled, it has been foreclosed upon, both financially and emotionally, culminating in a moment of such profound irony and public desperation that it serves as the definitive coda to the grand experiment of plural marriage he so fervently evangelized. The recent dual revelations, of his and Robin Brown's shocking bankruptcy filing and his subsequent, thinly veiled public plea to his ex-wife Christine and her new husband, David Woolley, for financial assistance, represent more than just a personal crisis. They are the final, unambiguous verdict on a legacy built on shifting sands of favoritism, financial mismanagement, and a catastrophic failure of leadership. This is not merely a story of a man down on his luck. It is a Shakespearean-scale unraveling, a spectacle of comeuppance where the very principles Kody touted as the source of his strength, a large family, a unified purse, and unwavering loyalty to the patriarch, have now become the instruments of his profound humiliation, exposing the hollow core of a kingdom that was always more facade than fortress. The bankruptcy filing, a stark ledger of failure, lays bare the economic reality that has long been suspected but never so concretely proven. That the financial engine of the Brown family, historically powered by the collective efforts of Janelle, Christine, and Mary, sputtered and died when it was redirected solely to feed the insatiable appetite of the loyal wife, Robin, and her household, a reallocation of resources that funded a lifestyle of apparent indulgence while the other wives were emotionally and financially abandoned, their contributions evaporating like mist once they were no longer of use to the central narrative. This fiscal collapse is the physical manifestation of Kody's spiritual and managerial bankruptcy, a paper trail leading directly to a mansion in Flagstaff that stands not as a symbol of family unity, as he once dreamed, but as a monument to debt, division, and a profoundly misguided set of priorities, an anchor dragging him and his chosen wife into a sea of red ink from which there appears to be no rescue. Yet, it is the breathtaking audacity of his public maneuver following this financial exposure that truly seals his fate in the court of public opinion and reveals the depth of his delusion, a plea, dressed in the language of wounded pride and paternal concern, directed at Christine Brown and David Woolley, the very embodiment of the happiness and stability he failed to provide. This is not a simple request. It is a masterpiece of passive-aggressive performance, a calculated appeal designed to leverage public sentiment and Christine's well-documented kindness to pressure her into bailing out the man who relegated her to a basement and dismissed her needs for over 2 decades. He speaks of providing for all his children and the pain of not being able to do so, a noble sentiment that rings utterly hollow when one considers which children have consistently been prioritized and which have been sidelined, the same children whose mothers he now expects to come to his aid. The plea is a testament to a staggering lack of self-awareness, an expectation that the woman he emotionally starved, whose marriage he allowed to wither in plain sight, and whose eventual departure he met with scorn and accusations of disloyalty, should now feel a sense of obligation to save him from the consequences of the very choices that pushed her away. It is a move born of a terminal entitlement, the belief that the patriarch, even in his utter failure, is still owed something by the family he dismantled. In addressing David Woolley, he attempts a clumsy diplomacy, acknowledging the man's good character not as a genuine compliment but as a strategic setup, a way to implicate him in the noble cause of saving Kody's sinking ship, betting that a good man's desire to help might override the glaringly obvious fact that he bears zero responsibility for the financial mess Kody created with Robin. The contrast between the two households could not be more stark or more damning for Kody. On one side, there is Christine and David, a portrait of radiant, uncomplicated joy, financial stability, and blended family success. Their social media feeds are a barrage of happiness, family vacations, supportive gestures, and a palpable sense of mutual respect and admiration. They represent everything Kody claimed to want but failed to achieve: genuine love, functional partnership, and a home filled with laughter, not tension. On the other side sits Kody and Robin, shrouded in the gloom of their own making, surrounded by the dusty relics of a plural family they systematically alienated, now facing the cold, hard reality of financial ruin. This dichotomy is the ultimate judgment on Kody's life's work. Christine didn't just leave, she flourished, and her flourishing is the most potent indictment of his leadership. Her success proves that the problem was never plural marriage itself, as he now bitterly claims, but his execution of it. His plea to her, therefore, is not just a cry for money, it is an unconscious admission of her victory and his defeat. He is effectively acknowledging that she holds the key to a security and prosperity that he, the self-proclaimed alpha, could never secure. The man who once dictated the movements and relationships of an entire family now finds himself in the ultimate submissive position, a supplicant to the wife he discarded, begging for help from the life she built without him. This is a cosmic-level humiliation, a reversal of fortune so complete it feels less like karma and more like poetic justice. The bankruptcy shocker is the factual evidence of his failure, but the plea to Christine and David is the emotional confession, a public white flag that signals the end of Kody Brown's reign not with a bang, but with a whimper, and a request for a loan. Finally, the facade is gone, the resources are depleted, and the king stands alone in his empty castle, finally understanding that loyalty cannot be demanded, it must be earned, and that the price of losing it is far higher than any dollar amount listed on a bankruptcy filing. Kody Brown, finally and undeniably in a state of profound crisis. This is not the performative angst of a man disappointed by a wife's rebellion or a child's distance, this is the raw, destabilizing shock of a man whose entire world, built on the twin pillars of control and commerce, is crumbling around him. The recent revelation of his and Robin Brown's bankruptcy filing is not merely a financial footnote but the catastrophic climax of years of fiscal irresponsibility, a move that lays bare the utter failure of the Kody Brown family as a functional economic unit and exposes the fragile house of cards upon which his Flagstaff dream was built. This financial implosion, however, is only one facet of a multifaceted breakdown, it is intrinsically linked to a deeper, more humiliating spiritual bankruptcy, symbolized by his desperate, albeit indirect, pleas to the very people who represent his most public failures, his ex-wife Christine, now radiantly reborn as Christine Woolley, and her new husband, the quintessentially stable and normal David Woolley. Kody's crisis is therefore a perfect storm of his own making, a confluence of economic desperation and a devastating collapse of ego, where the loss of money is inextricably tied to the loss of face, forcing him to confront a reality where the patriarch is now a pauper, and the discarded wife is the one living the fairy tale. The bankruptcy filing is the undeniable exclamation point on a sentence of financial folly that began the moment Kody decided to uproot his enormous family from the paid-for homes in Las Vegas to pursue a vague and ill-conceived plan in Flagstaff. This was not a strategic relocation but a narcissistic flight, a pursuit of some mythical family property on Coyote Pass that would serve as a physical testament to his legacy. Instead, it became a money pit, a symbol of paralysis and debt. The math was always terrifying, multiple mortgages, towering rent on Robin's lavish rental home, which she famously required to have room for the kids, a demand that now reads as tragically ironic, and the dead weight of unsellable Las Vegas properties. Kody's business ventures, from the laughably unsuccessful Kody Brown Family Entertainment LLC to his gun show appearances, proved to be insufficient band-aids on a hemorrhaging financial reality. The bankruptcy, therefore, is the final, involuntary admission of this failure. It is the system crashing. It strips away the last vestiges of the successful provider persona he so desperately clung to. This isn't just about being broke, it's about the public, legal certification of his inability to provide, the very cornerstone of his patriarchal identity. For a man who defined his worth by his leadership and his ability to sustain his family, this is an existential wound. It confirms every criticism levied by his former wives about his impulsive and irresponsible decision-making, and it leaves him and Robin, the one wife who remained loyal to the sinking ship, facing a future of severely diminished means and prospects, anchored to a worthless plot of land they cannot afford to develop. Yet, the financial bankruptcy is merely the material manifestation of a far more profound spiritual and emotional bankruptcy. Kody's core identity has been eviscerated. The man who once held court over a family of 24, whose every word was debated and whose affections were the currency of the household, is now a diminished figure. His kingdom has seceded, one wife at a time. Mary lingers as a ghost at the feast, a relationship in name only. Janelle has finally pried herself free from his financial entanglement and emotional neglect. But it is the loss of Christine that clearly haunts him most, and her subsequent happiness is the salt in his festering wounds. Her departure was the first major crack in the foundation, and her rapid, storybook romance and marriage to David Woolley was the wrecking ball that demolished the remaining structure of Kody's ego. David represents everything Kody is not: emotionally available, publicly affectionate, financially stable, and refreshingly normal. He doesn't need to perform masculinity, he simply embodies it through quiet consistency and unwavering support. Kody's recent, jarring comments, wistfully mentioning that Christine won the breakup or that her new life looks like a fairy tale, are not compliments. They are the involuntary cries of a man being crushed by the weight of his own regrets. They are a plea, not for her return, but for absolution and a twisted form of validation. He is pleading with the narrative itself, begging the audience and perhaps himself to see that he is not the villain, but a complex victim of his own choices. He wants acknowledgement that his loss is profound, that Christine's gain is his catastrophic loss. This is the plea to Christine and David, a plea to stop being such a perfect, shining counterpoint to his own failure. This crisis is the inevitable result of a fundamental miscalculation. Kody, in his self-absorption, believed his family structure was sustained by his authority and their dependence. He failed to understand it was sustained by the women's labor, emotional, physical, and financial, and their willingness to uphold the myth. Once Christine revoked her consent to the narrative, the entire operation unraveled with shocking speed. Her exit provided the blueprint for Janelle, and her happiness with David provided the proof that life on the other side was not just possible, but preferable. Kody is now left with the consequences of his monarchy: Robin, the loyal queen in a castle of debt, surrounded by the trinkets of a faded dream, and a populace that has happily sworn allegiance to new republics of their own making. His bankruptcy is both financial and relational. He is bankrupt of wives, bankrupt of the respect of many of his children, bankrupt of his narrative control, and finally, bankrupt of the resources to maintain the illusion any longer. The man in crisis we see today is not a sudden creation but the final, true unveiling of Kody Brown, stripped of his props and his platform. He is finally having to contend with the two things he spent a lifetime avoiding: accountability and consequences. His plea to Christine and David is the sound of that contention, the mournful wail of a dethroned king looking at the happy, solvent commoners outside his empty palace gates and wondering where it all went wrong.